Training.
Not anti-Semitism training, I meant. This session is called That's Funny, Don't Look Anti-Semitic, How to Recognise and Understand Anti-Jewish Racism. And I think it's really glad to have our speakers here and people who are going to be discussing this. So we've got Danny Stone from the Anti-Semitism Policy Trust and Dave Rich from the Community Security Trust. And yeah, I feel like it's going to be a great session. So join me in welcoming them to be part of this.
Thank you. And first of all, I just want to thank the Green Party for inviting us to run this session. It's the first session of this kind that we've run at any party conference, and I think it's really a really important and powerful message, and a really good sign that you're here to listen to this, and I hope we can have a productive hour or so to move forward. One, I suppose, health warning is, as you can see from the picture on the screen, we're going to be dealing with some pretty unpleasant stuff over the next hour or so. I apologise for that, but there's really no way to talk about and explain anti-Semitism without encountering some pretty nasty language and images, and I hope you receive them in that light. This picture is graffiti from the walls of Birmingham University last year, I believe, shortly before the elections to the executive of the student union, because there were some Jewish students standing for election. And this graffiti, a Nazi swastika and the message, "Dirty Jews, resign or die," appeared on one of the walls in the university. And I think it's quite an instructive example because it only takes one person to do this graffiti. And they do not need to be in any way representative of the views of the wider student union, the wider community, and of course, most people at Birmingham University and in the student union were absolutely horrified by it. But just that one person and this one piece of graffiti can have an enormously powerful and damaging impact on how Jewish students at the university felt and how any other minority students at the university felt. Because the kind of people who will draw a swastika and a death threat to Jews will do it to other minorities just as quickly. Now, my organisation, Community Security Trust, is a UK Jewish charity. We've been going since 1994, and we take reports of anti-Semitic hate incidents and hate crimes from Jewish people all over the country. We give them victim support and victim advocacy. We liaise with the police to make sure that the victims are getting the necessary support from them. We work with the CPS, and we give them security advice, and we organise security at synagogues and schools and other Jewish buildings across the country. This is a table showing the annual number of anti-Semitic incidents that we have recorded over the last 6 years. The total in 2017 was just short of 1,400 incidents. That's UK-wide and completely cross-communal. We work with from the most religious to the most secular, left-wing, right-wing, young, old. We take reports and give support to everyone who comes to us and who needs it. The figure in 2017 was a record total, the most we've ever recorded in a single year. Now, in addition to the roughly 1,400 or so anti-Semitic incidents we recorded, we also had around 400 reports of potential incidents that we did not log as anti-Semitic because there was not evidence of anti-Semitism. Now, what do I mean by that? When someone reports an incident to us, we'll give them the necessary support they need, always. But for the incident to make it into our figures of how many anti-Semitic hate incidents happen, there needs to be some evidence of anti-Semitic language, content, targeting, motivation. There has to be something. So of those 400 or 500 non-anti-Semitic incidents we record, there might be criminal damage to a Jewish building, it might be a Jewish school kid getting mugged for their phone, it might be strong anti-Israel language because it does not use anti-Semitic language and is not gratuitously targeted at Jewish people. We don't include any of that in our figures. Now, what you will see, if you look at the peaks in this total, is that before the last couple of years, the largest peak was in 2014. And what we always used to see is that when there was a war involving Israel, we would get an increase in anti-Semitic incidents in this country, and that is mirrored by police hate crime figures as well. Now again, I must stress, this is carried out by a small minority of people that can completely distort the perception of what's going on. But it happens every time there is a war involving Israel. In the last 2 years, there has not been any similar kind of conflict to the one that happened in the summer of 2014, that I'm sure many of you remember. A lot of people in Gaza lost their lives, and there were demonstrations here and so on. The last 2 years, there hasn't been a similar kind of war or spike in conflict, but we still had 2 record years of anti-Semitic hate crimes going on, and that's more about the general atmosphere in this country, the political atmosphere and the social atmosphere, and again, that's something that's been felt by lots of different minorities over the last 2 years. It comes from different places, different parts of the political spectrum. I'll come on to that. But that's the broader atmosphere in which we're having these debates and in which anti-Semitism has become such a national political issue. Now, when I talk about hate crimes, who is it who's actually being targeted in this country? When we break down the incidents reported to us, the most common type of anti-Semitic incident is the one on the left as you're looking at it, individuals in public. Random Jewish individual walking down the street who may or may not be visibly Jewish, however we want to define that term, perhaps by religious dress or some other means, and a completely random stranger walking past them or driving past them shouts something anti-Semitic at them. If they're unlucky, that person throws something at them, and if they're very unlucky, that person stops and throws a punch at them. That's the most common type of anti-Semitic incident we get reported to us at CST. But there's lots of other types. As you can see, the Star of David in the middle represents Jewish community organisations, communal events, Jewish commercial premises, so kosher restaurants, that kind of thing, or community leaders, high-profile individuals, whether that's well-known rabbis or Jewish members of parliament. Over 140 incidents of that type last year. Also, a lot of incidents happen at people's homes, so it's very local to them, it really affects their quality of life, and also incidents affecting synagogues, which is, I think, for most people, perhaps the most visible Jewish building in a neighbourhood. In terms of what type of hate crime we get recorded, this is the kind of stuff that on a daily basis affects Jewish people, how anti-Semitism affects their lives. Most of it, thankfully, is not violent. Only around 10% is violent, and thankfully of that, most of that is not violence that causes serious injury. Most of it, the big kind of dark chunk in that pie chart, is what we call abusive behaviour. It's anti-Semitic comments that are shouted. It's anti-Semitic graffiti on a random wall in a park. It's things on social media. It's hate mail. That's where the anti-Semitism happens. It's people expressing bigoted attitudes, prejudiced attitudes towards Jewish people, towards the Jewish community as a whole, towards their idea of what Jews are. Here's an example. Graffiti at a synagogue in Leeds last year. Swastika graffiti on the sign of the synagogue. The phrase "Kikes Get Out," which is an old anti-Semitic slur, quite a North American far-right slur. That tends to be where we see it the most. From looking at this, it looks like it's local far-right people, neo-Nazis, who've done this. Again, very distressing for the local synagogue where this happened, and for everybody. When a hate crime happens, it affects everybody in the community, Not just those who go to that synagogue, but everybody in Leeds, and then as it spreads on social media, everybody in the whole of the UK, in the Jewish community, more and more people see it, and their sense of safety and well-being and belonging is affected by it. And that's the real danger of hate crime. I'm pleased to say the local mosque were incredibly supportive when this happened. And we repeatedly see this. Synagogues are targeted by either anti-Semitic or Islamophobic hate crime. Quite often, there's a positive impact in the way it brings communities together in terms of the support that then comes. And that's always incredibly reaffirming and reassuring for the people who've experienced the hate crime in the first place. This is a cemetery in Manchester, a Jewish cemetery, where 3 times this year people have broken into the cemetery and smashed up gravestones. Again, incredibly upsetting. And this is an example of how, look, this is a hate crime where nobody's actually injured, right? It's damage to property. But the moral impact, the symbolism, the way it makes people feel is hugely damaging. And then, when we move from this kind of physical attacks on kind of the infrastructure of the Jewish community, on synagogues and on cemeteries, increasingly more and more, where Jewish people see and hear anti-Semitism, as well as on the streets, as I've said, is on social media. And the thing about social media is that a single tweet or a single post can be seen by lots of people, whereas a comment in the street might only be heard by one. A couple of examples, and again, I apologise for the language in this. Straight Holocaust denial on Twitter. Here's another one, attacking a prominent Jewish politician. I think because he said he didn't want Donald Trump to come to the UK. I think that's what sparked this tweet. The image. I've shown you this tweet for a reason, because that caricature, that grotesque, ugly caricature, is something that crops up over centuries of anti-Semitic imagery, and we will see it repeatedly, I'm afraid, over the next hour. And every time I show you ones from history, I want you to remember it's still alive on social media and used by people today. But anti-Semitism isn't just about incidents, it's about attitudes. What do people in this country actually think of Jewish people? Well, earlier this year, my organisation, the CST, was involved in producing this, which is the largest ever survey, opinion poll of attitudes towards Jewish people that's ever been done in this country. And we also asked about attitudes towards Israel, and we compared the two, and I'll come back to that. And the first piece of good news, and I think it's always important to put any talk about anti-Semitism into context, is that overall, generally speaking, Britain is comparatively not a very anti-Semitic country. Most people in this country are not anti-Semitic. Most Jewish people in this country have a good life, and that's the context in which we have to have this discussion. So the first thing we did in this poll, we asked people, just very straightforward, do you feel favourably or unfavourably towards Jewish people? And we asked about other religious groups as well. And the blue bars are those who said they feel favourable, and the red are those who said they feel unfavourable. And as you can see, the blue bars are much bigger, right? And the red bars are much smaller. The people who are more warmly disposed towards Jewish people quite far outnumber those who are willing to tell an opinion pollster, and I'll put that caveat in, those who are willing to tell an opinion pollster that they don't like Jews. As you can see from that, there's more Islamophobia, right? Of those 4 groups that we asked about, Muslims came out as the least popular, Christians as the most popular, or least unpopular, Hindus and Jews in the middle. If you look at the dark red block, there's about 2.5% of people in this country who you can say are full-on, hardcore anti-Semites who know it and who are very happy to tell people about it. And then there's another 10% or so who, if you push them, they probably don't like Jews, but it's a bit more latent, a bit softer. Now that's a very blunt way to find out. I think, sorry, we're going to have questions at the end if that's okay, otherwise we're not going to get through this. That's a very blunt way to find out how people feel. Another way is to put a set of different attitudes to them about Jewish people and see which ones they agree and disagree with. So we did that. We put a series of negative attitudes, what you might call negative stereotypes or hostile opinions about Jews to the people in this poll. There was about 4,000 or 5,000 people in the poll, along with some positive questions, right? Because we wanted to give people the chance to say positive things as well, so we're not leading people down a rabbit warren here. And again, what came out, the positive questions got the most agreement. That's the red bars now, right? The ones at the top. Most people were very happy to agree with the positive statements. With the negative statements, Jews think they're better than other people. The interests of Jews are very different from the interests of British people, so kind of Jews aren't properly British. Jews get rich at the expense of others, they have too much power. A little bit more agreement there than when we asked people straight out, do you like or dislike Jews? I was very happy to see a Holocaust denial agreement, 2 to 4%, so really a very fringe view. Now the catch with this, of course, is that it's not the same people saying yes to each one of these negative questions. Some people will agree with one, some people will agree with others. You add them all together, we've now put 9 different negative statements about Jews to our opinion poll. How many people agreed with at least one? Right? How many people in this country hold at least one anti-Semitic attitude in their head? And the answer is 30%. Just short of a third of people in this country believe or agree with at least one anti-Semitic stereotype, one hostile or negative attitude about Jewish people. Now, again, I must stress, this doesn't make them anti-Semitic. A lot of those people will probably also believe positive things about Jewish people. It's just a reflection of the fact that lots of people think in stereotypes. Lots of people hear things, they might not know Jewish people. You know, around half of people in this country say they don't know any Jewish people. They've heard something, they've seen it on TV, they've read it on social media, a friend told them, and they just kind of absorb it as an idea and believe it, and then they might come out with it. And when they come out with it, maybe a Jewish person hears it or sees it and is very offended by it. Right? So the attitudes circulate much more widely than the number of people who are actually anti-Semitic, and that probably holds for other bigotries as well. Now, what kind of language am I talking about? What kind of language do people use? I said people report anti-Semitic hate crimes to us at CST. Last year, we took all these social media incidents that have been reported to us, all the examples of anti-Semitism on Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and so on, and we made a word cloud, right? We looked at what are the most common words that are used in these tweets and posts that can tell us what is the language of anti-Semitism today, right? This is the word cloud we came up with. And I'm going to talk you through 3 different groups of words. Right? Obviously, the biggest one in the middle, Jews, because that's what anti-Semites talk about, that's what anti-Semitic language relates to. This is the first group, right? This is the group of words that probably won't surprise you, that these words are connected to anti-Semitic expressions. Right? Hitler, Holocaust, Nazis. The one at the top, Holocaust. Right? Again, that's a common Holocaust denial word. You often see it with a hashtag on Twitter. But there's other groups as well, and I stress, this is only language where there's evidence of anti-Semitic targeting or motivation. Right? Here's another group of words. Right? Now these are words that on their own are not in any way anti-Semitic. Palestinian, Zionist, Israel, these are not anti-Semitic words. But the language gets used in anti-Semitic ways, in abusive, threatening or harassing ways towards Jewish people. And here's a third group, which is conspiracy language. Money, bankers, media, Rothschild. Again, on their own, there's nothing anti-Semitic about these words. Right? Not Holocaust is always an anti-Semitic word. But they get used in that way. And these kind of conspiracy tropes, the central role that conspiracy theories play in anti-Semitism is really, really crucial to understanding how anti-Semitism works, and also why it's a bit different from other forms of racism. It is a form of racism, but it has its own characteristics. Here's an example of a tweet that uses all three language groups that I've mentioned. Right? A giant financial and political swindle, so conspiracy, serving only the interests of Israel and Zionism, so that was the second group of words I used, and the last word at the end, Holocaust denial. Right? Now, one of the things that social media has done, one of the things social media has changed, is that whereas in the past you could normally tell very quickly if an anti-Semitic expression or statement came from someone from a neo-Nazi, or from someone from a different political extreme, or someone from an extreme Islamist group that's targeting Jews somewhere. Nowadays you can't. The language is completely mixed, the boundaries are blurred, the source material is blurred. I don't know what political identity the person who did this tweet thinks they have, irrespective of whether they're right to think that. I don't know if the person who tweeted this would call themselves far right or call themselves something different. So all the different languages mixed up. Now
versus fascist all-stars.
yes, but still, you will get people using different images, different things like, I mean, seriously. I talked about conspiracy theory, right? Conspiracy theory is absolutely central to understanding anti-Semitism. This book, The Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion, is kind of the foundational text, the key text of anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. Right? It's a hoax that was produced by Tsarist Russia around 100 years ago, or just more than 100 years ago, by the secret police to try and slander Jews. It claimed to be the minutes, the protocols of a secret meeting of Jewish leaders that detailed their plans to run the world, right? To take over, to destabilize and take over governments, to cause wars, to cause revolutions, to undermine national identity and national culture. And it spread like wildfire. It was for a period the second highest selling book in the world, partly because Nazi Germany printed so many copies. It was serialized in the Times until the Times then debunked it, and it has been debunked many times over, but it still lives. I talked to you about the caricature of the Jewish person. If you look at the head on the snake, same caricature, right? And the snake with the Stars of David, the Jewish Stars of David, you often see that in anti-Semitic imagery. Jews depicted as snakes, as reptiles, as other kinds of monsters or creatures. And then on the right, again, it's a French copy of the same book, and again you have the anti-Semitic face on the Jewish person, and he has his claws in the world and the blood coming out of the claws. I'll come on to blood in a minute. And underneath the globe is all the oppressed masses crushed by the weight of the Jewish conspiracy. Now, I said this book has spread, so I've got a few copies. This is a copy produced by a far-right publishing house in this country in the 1970s. Right? It's a pretty straight down the line, neo-Nazi publisher, and of course they would publish the Protocols, because the Protocols was called by one historian as a warrant for genocide under the Nazis. It's what they believe, how they believe the world is run. This is a book published in Malaysia in 1990s, Jewish Conspiracy in the Muslim World with the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. Same Jewish conspiracy idea transposed to a completely different part of the world where it was first written, completely different society, completely different political situation, but used to explain whatever the writer wanted to explain about what was going on in the world at the time. This is a version published in the 1980s called Zionism and Internal Security, but again, all it is quotes from the Protocols. Right, now there's a couple of interesting things here, I think. One of them is that in Pakistan in the 1980s and in Malaysia in the 1990s, there basically were no Jews living there. It's not like Russia a century ago, in the place where my great-grandparents came from. right? You don't need Jews to be present to have anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is not about how actual living Jews actually behave. It's a conspiracy theory that explains the world, that uses an abstract hate figure of Jews to explain the world, and it can be applied anywhere, in any setting, in any society. And it still is. One person who really loved the protocols was Henry Ford of Ford Motor Cars. Right? He had his own newspaper in the 1920s called the Dearborn Independent, and he serialised the protocols with his own commentaries and his own articles in every issue. And after a while, he produced so many that they were all cobbled together and bound together, and they were published in a book called The International Jew. And here is the complete collection. It's pretty big, right? It's pretty big, and it has chapters on everything. On cinema, on jazz, on newspapers, on advertising, on judges, on the courts, on everything. Right? A friend of mine bought this in the main bookshop at Dubai Airport a few years ago. The point about what I'm saying is that these are not always fringe ideas. Some of these ideas are actually very deep, central, cultural beliefs about Jews that key into how people relate to Jewish and Jewish-related issues today, even if they don't know that this is the cultural reservoir that they are drawing on. I think, shall I skip on? I'm going to skip on a little bit. The point about conspiracy theories, let me just whiz through some of these. I know time is pressing. Conspiracy theories, as I said, can be used to explain everything. This is a tweet that was tweeted and then very quickly removed by the official Al Jazeera English Twitter channel last year, in May last year. It was a tweet advertising a program about climate change, right? A debate about climate change. And the image it uses is the same anti-Semitic image. And the conspiracy idea is that the whole global warming shtick, the whole thing, is a Jewish conspiracy. Right? I've got no idea why global warming is supposed to help the Talmudic plan of world domination. Right? The Talmud is one of the core Jewish religious texts. I've got no idea. But for whoever did that image, it's something. Right? I'm sure you all remember the horrific tragedy at the Grenfell Tower last year. Right? This was a tweet from a pro-Palestinian Twitter account in Brighton after the Grenfell Tower. Perhaps if Eric Pickles, who was Communities Secretary at some point in the last few years, had spent less time kowtowing to Israel and more time carrying out building safety recommendations. Right? Everything gets drawn back to this abstract hate figure, this scapegoat, on whom everything gets blamed. Right? And of course, the whole point about these tweets is that they are not addressing the real problems. The real reasons why Grenfell happened, the real reasons why climate change happens. So the real problems don't get addressed because the hate is directed somewhere else. And that's what conspiracy theories do. Now, I want to just look just very briefly at how this does relate to debates around Israel-Palestine. Because I think that's where, I think probably most of the examples of anti-Semitism I've showed you are things that most people would agree is easy to recognise as anti-Semitic, a desecration of the cemetery and so on. But this is where the contentious issue is. And I think it's really important to find your way through these disagreements and misunderstandings about the language and so on. I talked about how anti-Semitic incidents spike when Israel is at war. These are the monthly incident totals we recorded in 2014. Now, those of you who remember the conflict in Gaza, Israel, that summer, it happened in July and August. And as you can see, the monthly incident totals in the first half of the year were pretty constant, and then, zoom, up they go. And the number of incidents we recorded in July and August that year was more than we had in the whole of 2013. And then after the fighting ended, it subsided, right? Now again, I must stress, most people who were angry about what Israel were doing that summer, most people who campaigned for the Palestinians that summer, did not go out and carry out an anti-Semitic hate crime as a result. That's absolutely not what I'm saying, right? But this is the experience of many British Jews about what went on that summer, right? And that in itself, I think, needs to be recognised. This is a synagogue in Brighton that summer, right? The slogan "Free Gaza" obviously is not an anti-Semitic slogan in any way, shape or form. When it's daubed on a synagogue, it is, right? Because it's a direct attack on that community, on a religious building. And that's a more obvious way, perhaps, a more obvious thing. This is from a demonstration that summer in central London. This is the guy who came to the demonstration, and before the demonstration, it appears that he sat at home with a blank placard and a marker pen, and he thought to himself, what's the most important message I can write on my placard to show my feelings about what's happening in Gaza? And the message he wrote was, Hitler, you were right. Right, now again, no one else did that. That's just him. But that image, like the images that I've shown from Birmingham University and others, that went round the Jewish world. Right, that's what people saw. Now at the time, the other people on the demonstration around him did not tell him to put that placard away. They did not rip it out of his hand. They did not call over a police officer or a steward and get him thrown off the march. I think if they had done, that would have been the message. It would have been a much more positive message that went around the world. Unfortunately, though, he was not alone in that sentiment. This image went around social media that summer. Again, same message. Hitler, yes man, you were right. The hashtag Hitler was right trended worldwide on Twitter for about 24 hours during that conflict. Now, I said we did the largest ever survey of attitudes towards Jews in Israel in this country last year. And one of the things we did, we asked all the questions about Jews that I've shown. We asked a similar set of questions about Israel. How favourable, unfavourable do you feel? Do you agree or disagree with these statements? And then we matched up the people who agreed, who felt strongly negative about Israel, with the people who hold at least one anti-Semitic attitude. And what we found is that there was a correlation. Right? If you remember, I said 30% of people in this country hold at least one anti-Semitic view, at least one hostile belief or stereotype about Jews in their head. Right? The blue bar at the bottom is the people who have strongly anti-Israel views. 74% of them have at least one anti-Semitic attitude that they believe. Right? Now, 26% of people who are strongly anti-Israel have no anti-Semitism at all, repeatedly refuse to agree with any anti-Semitic statements. It's absolutely not the case, and I am not saying that being strongly anti-Israel, campaigning in a strong and powerful way against Israel is anti-Semitic, or is automatically an indication of anti-Semitism. It's not the case. But what I'm saying is that there is a correlation for this 70% that I think needs to be addressed, and I think hasn't been addressed over the years. I think it's one reason why we are now where we are in terms of these arguments and disagreements about anti-Semitism. So how can we avoid this, right? So how can we avoid this? I think there's four things to look at. One of them is language. What is the kind of language we use? I think to avoid the kind of conspiracy tropes that I've been talking about, the kind of traditional anti-Semitic ideas. I think to look at what is someone's motivation. I think if someone's motivation is just simply to campaign for the human rights of the Palestinians, and they don't really understand the language and they make a mistake, right? I think people should always get the benefit of the doubt. I think there's a role for education. But I think that has to be properly received in an open way. What is the impact? How does what someone says and does about Jews, how does it affect how most Jewish people feel? And how do those Jewish people understand what's going on? And I think if you ask yourself those four questions, then I think that will help to kind of avoid a lot of the arguments and a lot of the problems that we've had. That's me.
Ladies and gentlemen, I Days, thanks for having us here. I'm Danny Stone, Director of the Anti-Semitism Policy Trust. We work to educate and empower parliamentarians and policymakers to address anti-Semitism. I'm going to try and broaden things out and then narrow them down to look at policy and then a little bit of politics. So we provide the Secretariat to the All-Party Parliamentary Group Against Anti-Semitism. We take MPs to schools to visit CST, and that's what we're doing in these pictures. I should say we had an extremely positive engagement with the Green Party. We've never had a no. We've had meetings with Jonathan, Caroline, Jenny Jones attended one of our trips, and I'm very pleased with that. We struggle very hard to work with all parties. And it's also important to say that being a Jew in the UK, I think the UK is somewhat of a success story. We have some of the strongest race relations laws in the world. We have good frameworks for addressing anti-Semitism and, of course, other forms of racism. Together, our race relations laws don't specify anti-Semitism necessarily. The work that we do with the all-party group is to try and ensure that those frameworks are as robust and effective as possible. And the way that we've tried to ensure that is working with groups and MPs to look at those frameworks. So in 2005, 14 MPs came together and conducted an all-party inquiry into anti-Semitism. They looked at what was considered to be a rise in anti-Semitism, and they tried to make recommendations to address it. The difference was, with that all-party report, as opposed to some others, the government responded formally and set in progress work which continues today, looking to try and set strategies in place to deal with anti-Semitism. And one of the benefits of this work is that it's not only on anti-Semitism where we've managed to make a difference. As a result of this, the government set up a cross-government working group on anti-Semitism, and subsequently, given its success, set up a government working group on anti-Muslim hatred. So the benefits to other victims of hate crime are residual. The 30 recommendations of that original report were generally implemented, but we had difficulty implementing some of the recommendations in particular sectors, so when dealing with the internet or university campuses or elections, and that's something I'll come back to. 2014, the war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza, and the parliamentarians at that stage decided it was time to do another report because, as Dave pointed out, there was an increase in anti-Semitism, and there were another 35 recommendations. So I want to set out some of what's happened on dealing with anti-Semitism. Well, if we look at what happened with the Home Office, and specifically at policing, it used to be that the policing statistics were generalised on race hate. After the all-party inquiries, they disaggregated the figures on anti-Semitism so we could get a better understand and feel for what was happening when it came to anti-Semitism. Of course, understand anti-Semitism. The Ministry of Justice, there were recommendations from the Crown Prosecution Service, and as a result of the all-party inquiry, the CPS looked at their policies and procedures on prosecuting social media. They looked at the use of community impact statements when it came to prosecuting hate crime cases in court, and they provided additional funding to support victims of hate crime, which has been administered by the CST. On education, there is a specific threat against the Jewish community from terrorism. So pot of money was created to ensure there was physical security at Jewish schools and other institutions. There are, for what it's worth, there's a pot of money for other faith communities to access. This one was specifically for the Jewish community. But it's not just reactive, there were proactive measures, funding schools linking programs, so Jewish and other children of faith could learn from one another, get to meet one another, and break down barriers before they got to know one another. Looking at the Department of Communities, they put money into research into anti-Semitism. This was for a report called Playing the Nazi Card, trying to understand anti-Semitism, trying to better look at how government funds might be directed and what it. It's not just government departments that have been working on this. The judiciary, as a result of the second all-party inquiry, reviewed the bench book, rewrote it, and there's now a whole section on anti-Semitism and indeed on Islamophobia in the new bench book, equal treatment bench. Civil society, the Society of Editors looked at the way in which editors were editing online content and tried to send out some best practice, while non-departmental public bodies, the Equality and Human Rights Commission in this case, has sent out some guidance so that during elections we can ensure that the law is being properly applied. Overseas, we managed also to make an impact through new party inquiries. We've had in Germany, in Canada, in Italy, there have been inquiries run, parliamentary inquiries on anti-Semitism. We've had a statement, the London Declaration on Anti-Semitism, with Cameron and Brown signing it, but others have too. And we established the first internet working group based in Palo Alto, bringing together the heads of content for Twitter and Facebook and others to talk about how they were dealing with and addressing cyber hate on their platforms. And this is me getting excited about PowerPoint, you might see that a couple of other times. The Combating Anti-Semitism Guide was sent to all of our embassies abroad to show how in Britain we'd run an anti-Semitism inquiry and how others might do so too. We addressed as many of the concerns as we could. As I said, in some areas it was difficult to make progress, but eventually when it came to higher education, we specified that Jewish students were feeling most concerned about hate speech on campus. And so we worked with Universities UK and the National Union of Students to produce guidance on it. And it's important to say that in the areas where it's been difficult to make progress, like online, every stage tried to ensure that free speech remains at the vanguard of that sector. We're not seeking to impinge on free speech in any way, rather to put in place appropriate protection. So it might be filming an event, it might be ensuring the speaker signs a contract in advance, it might be a system through which people can raise concerns about a speaker coming to their campus. These are all positive frameworks for addressing anti-Semitism we've managed to put in place. And there's much more I could talk about football, about policing, about government preparedness. But I thought it's also worth outlining some of the policy challenges as a political party conference. What are the things that you might be able to do on a policy level? So when it comes to mainstream press, we still have an issue. This was an article in 2010 by a lady called Christine Patterson, who wrote about the limits of multiculturalism when I first moved to Stamford Hill, which is an area with a predominant and visible Jewish community. I didn't realise the Goyim were about as welcome in Hasidic Jewish shops as Martin Luther King at a Ku Klux Klan convention. So here she's using the commonly held view, Dave talked before about the ideas of Jews as superior or uncivilized, this kind of chosen people for to us, against the Jews. At present, there is no way to complain about this through the Independent Press Standards Organisation because they don't take complaints about discrimination against a group, only with a protected characteristic. So, in press, the new press regulator does allow for this. In Australia, they allow for this. But we have a problem in that we cannot complain about discrimination against groups. So when Katie Hopkins wrote about migrants as cockroaches, that was heard under Ipso's terms on accuracy, as opposed to discrimination. So there is a problem. When it comes to prisons, prison governors now have more authority than they ever had before to apply budgets at a local level. But if you're convicted of a hate crime, the chances are that you won't, if it's, let's say, an anti-Semitic hate crime, you won't meet a Jew. You won't necessarily have any talk about anti-Semitism, you won't get any training or any education. And even the simplest things, commemorating Holocaust Memorial Day, for example, aren't happening in prisons across the UK. Black History Month, Interfaith Awareness Week. These things aren't happening, they could and should be happening. And when it comes to education, in 2014, a study carried out by the UCL Centre for Holocaust Education found 68% of some 8,000 students surveyed were unfamiliar with the term anti-Semitism. It's despite the Holocaust being a compulsory part of our curriculum under history. Nearly 8,000 students, 68% didn't know the term anti-Semitism. We need statutory PSHE education in schools. That is one way that we might improve teaching about discrimination, but the big remains the internet. Online, there is illegal material, there is hateful material. In Australia, social media companies require a license to operate. In Germany, they are starting to fine social media companies. And the level of abuse, and some of you may have experienced abuse, is increasing incredible. It's a continuing problem. In the UK, we're shortly to have a white paper on this, but we've been pushing for a statutory code of practice for the social media companies and a duty of care. How can it be that in a football stadium, in a health and safety executive will hold them to account for failures? In the UK, there's no duty of care on the providers of these platforms, who continue to perceive themselves as mere conduits for the hate that's propagated on their platforms rather than publishers. And I think that it's having an impact on our democracy, and certainly for the Jewish community, there is an impact. And I want to start to begin to narrow this back down and bring it home to the Green Party, actually. So when we see it here, the party put up a sign, never forget, today marks Holocaust Memorial Day, Caroline Lucas signing the Book of Commitment in Parliament. It was sad, I think, is the best one to say, to see comments underneath. Anyone would think that nobody else lost their people in the two world wars. What about the Palestinians, and what about Israel doing to them? Perspective. At the bottom, I know this horrible thing has happened, but we seem to have too much emphasis on the Jews that got exterminated. So has many others around the world, but we don't give them airtime, sometimes no more than a footnote in history, which plays into some of the conspiracy language that there was looking at earlier. Now, I'm not suggesting or activists, this is a problem of the internet. And it's a problem with the internet, and it I think demeans our politics. The impact, of course, when people see this kind of thing, when the Jewish community see this, is quite broad. And so it falls to political parties. I said before, we did I'll come up with the questions at the end. We did a special inquiry into electoral conduct. It falls to political parties and elected officials to speak out and to be educated about this. We do need the right structures. That is why, as a result of our inquiry, the Committee on Standards in Public Life did an inquiry into electoral abuse, and now the Law Commission is looking at the trolling laws. Political parties need to be strong, to be quick, to be effective in their discipline. The Jewish Chronicle reported a year ago that they had frustrations in engaging with the Green Party, and also there have been stories about candidates and concerns about anti-Semitism being espoused from candidates. It is, and I should say, I will stand up, and I have done, I've sat in meetings with the SNP, with the Lib Demis, and have talked to them about concerns in their party, and so I think it's important to highlight some of the issues that have happened in the Green Party, and we're open to talk about them. And I'd start by saying there is great stuff that the party has done. In 2008, motion passed was absolutely unequivocal about anti-Semitism, and that is important. And I know you've been debating it again at this conference, so I know that there are people that care and wish to do the right thing and what have you. In the fringes of the debate at the 2008 conference was a session to talk about anti-Semitism, and one of the cartoons that was used to promote the session was this. This shows a man under duress wearing a Free Palestine banner, two hands with a US cup in one hand and an Israeli on the other, placing a gag over his mouth, and on the gag is the word written, anti-Semitism. The cartoonist was the runner-up in the Iranian Holocaust cartoon competition. The suggestion is that anti-Semitism is weaponized, it's a tool, it's applied in bad. You see that the debate, of course, was about anti-Semitism. That was 2008. Moving things forward, 2014.
That was about me.
Mike.
Sorry, yes, that actually was about me, but I noticed that Jewish Chronicle changed my name and my gender. There was a complaint about me using the word Zio on Twitter, which is short for Zionist. I'm Jewish. A Zionist is somebody who supports the ideology of Zionism. Zionism is an ideology. As far as I'm concerned, it's like calling a Trotskyist a trot. So that is one example of anti-Semitism that doesn't exist. But actually, while I've got the mic, I'd just like to say Community security justice, I thought that talk was mostly very sensible. But I just wonder, you say you protect the Jewish community, I wonder why that means, I mean, maybe you've changed the policy, but I was stopped from leafleting in a public highway by the CST. I was stopped from going into a meeting about Gaza organised by the Liberal Jewish Synagogue. A rabbi put my name down. As soon as the CST knew it was me, they didn't let me in. And a Jewish friend of mine went to a Zionist Federation event on Israel and the environment, and she was pulled out. She was pulled out by the people from the CST. So the CST, in my experience, are not always protecting Jews from.
I'm sorry, Debbie, you're not protecting the Jewish mainstream Jewish they are antagonising the mainstream Jewish community from anti-Zionist Jews. I've been called a self-hating Jew, a capo. I've had hate mail saying, keep your films on Jew. The CST do nothing about
Deborah, we're going to let our... Deborah, could you respect the fact that we've invited people here to discuss...
wrote a defamatory letter against me in Jewish News in 2008. It's a defamatory letter. I had to go to press complaints. Do you remember?
I know.
Well, because they were very threatened by me setting up Jewish Jews. I don't care. They should not have asked these people to talk. It's great to talk, but these organisations are advocates for Israel. Why do we get Brian Love to talk about anti-Semitism? Jewish intellectuals. I think it's very fair. I think it's very fair. I think people need to know what this organisation is. Oh, I think it's fine. This is Palestinian man here.
ladies and gentlemen, I just want to reiterate my point that I understand that for some people this, for everyone, can be an emotive subject. I think it would be hypocritical of me not to stand here and say something about what I've seen on comments boards or in places about the Green Party in the way that I do to other political parties. I will not treat any party differently. I'm not seeking to treat any party differently, and I'm not trying to bring up individual cases. My point before, which I'll reiterate again, is that it is incumbent on political parties to have appropriate disciplinary procedures. I don't want to prejudice the outcome of any disciplinary complaint. That's not the point of it. The point is that our political parties, for the sake of our democracy, have to be well-functioning, have to have appropriate policies in place and appropriate procedures for applying them. Now, I'll skip it. There's clearly, I think, a kind of a requirement to have some Q&A. So I'll skip through some of this. The point I was going to make was that I could show you examples from 2014, from 2015, and even from this conference in 2018, at which some of the conspiracy material that David was discussing has been voiced in Green Party forums. And it is up to the individuals in the party, activists and what have you, to call those out. Dave's given you some of the tools to do that. But as we enter particularly difficult times now in our democracy, we need people who are educated about anti-Semitism and willing to call it out where they see it, because the frameworks that we have that I've talked you through are all very well. But if we come across comments on Facebook, comments in our political party forums, and we will not challenge them, then our democracy is going to be worse for it. So that I hope that what you heard over the course of this session has helped you feel empowered to take action when you see anti-Semitism.
Thank you so much for that. As we look at what's happened in our communities and rising hate, that ensuring that we're talking about anti-Semitism is so vital in our communities and in our parties as well. Being able to recognise and understand where this hate comes from and making sure it's not swept under the carpet is an important way to begin to address this in our communities. And it's rife, it's been, we've seen the statistics, and I think it's been really, really interesting to have had that description and all of that information on the role it plays in the Jewish community. If I'll move to Q&As, if we could keep it to questions, that would be fantastic. Okay, I've got a hand at the front here.
Thank you. Tom Franklin, your Green Party, the only place in the country, I believe, has had a pogrom. The point I want to make is that some people do weaponise anti-Semitism to prevent anti-Zionism. I have seen it, I have actually been thinking of that myself. I'll describe myself as an anti-Zionist, I completely oppose racism in any form, whether it's homophobia, anti-Afghani, whatever. But I do see it being weaponised, and I think that this is a serious problem. And I think if you deny that, you're denying a real problem, and you are actually causing yourself problems. And you know, showing that slide, saying that people weaponise it, and then saying they don't. Actually, they do.
There was one at the front here.
This is mostly for the gentleman on the right, sorry I didn't catch your name. There was a slide where you had like Facebook comments and you blacked out people's names and faces. Partly I was wondering like why shouldn't people be kind of shown for what they're willing to say publicly? And secondly, what do you think is sort of the quote-unquote right way to call someone out when they're either unwittingly falling into anti-Semitic tropes or they're quite clearly being intentionally anti-Semitic?
Thank you. And a third question?
Please ask that we just have question and answer, because then it's much easier to follow.
Sure.
So if we could just deal with one question, one answer.
So I'm taking it in threes because we have 12 minutes until the end of the session, and I want to be able to ensure that we hear from different voices, and it gives a chance to get so I am going to take a third question, and I will take it from the person at the front here.
I'm Annie from the Croydon Green Party. I'd just like to ask if leading, it's really trying to put the context of what you're doing, saying, which I think is, you know, I accept and it's really useful, in the context of the discussions that are actually being had out here. And to ask if leading Jewish organisations, such as the British Board of Deputies, is describes themselves as representing all Jews, if they then begin to criticise campaigns like the BDS campaign, does that not then make it difficult for us to understand what anti-Semitism is, when I think it's being deliberately actually confused by people conflating anti-Semitism with anti-Zionism and criticisms of Israel, and that being done by leading Jewish organisations who are very resistant to any commentary on that. In a sense, what they seem to be doing is creating a Jewish identity which is not real, in that some Jews agreed with them and some don't. I think it makes it very difficult for us to identify anti-Semitism.
Okay, thank you. Look, on this question of anti-Semitism being weaponised and claims of anti-Semitism being created or conflated or whatever, I think you're really going for the easy option here, right? It's very easy to accuse people of being dishonest because they're saying things that are difficult or complicated or uncomfortable, right? When Jewish people tell you that they think something you've said and done is anti-Semitic, on the whole, they are being honest about their perception and their feelings. I'm not talking about the Daily Mail here, right? I'm not talking about Guido Fawkes or some Tory MP. When Jewish people, when mainstream Jewish organisations say this, it's much easier to just say they're advocates for Israel, they're lying, they're trying to shut us up, they're trying to stop us criticising, than it is to accept that they have perhaps a fundamentally, certainly a very different perception of what is and is not anti-Semitic. Now, you may disagree with them. You may be completely entitled to disagree with them. They may be objectively wrong about what is or is not anti-Semitic. But the point is they're being honest about what they think.
right? There was a very important survey done across the whole of the EU in 2012, 2013 about Jewish perceptions of what is and is not anti-Semitic. And they asked about exactly this, right? And for British Jews, I can tell you the figures, it's one of the slides I didn't have time to go through, right? 6% of British Jews say that if somebody criticises Israel, they are not anti-Semitic. Sorry, they are anti-Semitic. Sorry, avoiding the slip. Right? 6% said someone who criticises Israel is definitely anti-Semitic. Right? And 27% said probably anti-Semitic. So about a third. Right? But 2/3 of British Jews said if someone criticises Israel, they're not anti-Semitic. But when they were asked, what about someone who supports a boycott of Israeli goods and products, that flipped. 2/3 of British Jews said someone who supports a boycott of Israeli goods and products is probably or definitely anti-Semitic. Right? And a third said not. Now, you can, I think, make a very good case as to why they're wrong. Right? But the point is, when the Board of Deputies of British Jews try and represent the mainstream, the bulk, where the centre of gravity is of Jewish opinion in this country, right? That's pretty much the view they're going to try and represent, right? And the fact is, support for Israel, I don't mean support for every policy, I don't mean support for every government, but a general emotional alignment with Israel as a place and a nation is overwhelmingly the position of where most Jewish people are. That does not mean it's illegitimate to hold a different position if you're Jewish. Right? There has always been an anti-Zionist tradition in Jewish politics, always. But you have to recognise that is very much a minority position. Right? It is. Right? Opinion polls, right? I'm sorry to keep going back to opinion polls, but they're the most reliable thing we have on this. Right? Opinion polls repeatedly show over 90% of Jewish people in this country say Israel plays some role in their Jewish identity. Now that means not every Jew. That means not every Jewish person. And it is legitimate, of course, for Jewish people to answer no to that question and to have a different sense of their Jewish identity. But you have to accept, right, that is where the mainstream Jewish opinion and Jewish sentiment and Jewish feeling is. And when those Jewish people say they feel an attack on Israel as an attack on their identity, they may be wrong, right? They may be wrong to feel that, in as much as you can say feelings are wrong. But they're not lying about how they feel. They're not being dishonest. They're telling you how they actually feel about this stuff. And what I would say is, if you engage with them on that basis about how they feel, and how you feel, and how it affects you, to have that put back on you, you might actually get somewhere in terms of a dialogue instead of just taking the easy option of dismissing these people as liars.
I'll just on the blacking out. I did that because, but partly for data protection actually, and also because I didn't want to apply motive to the people who've said a particular thing. I think they very much have a chance to. I think that what I put on the slide can be taken in a particular context, but I don't want to necessarily prejudice a particular person's reason for putting that out there. I think open questions are the way to go. I think that Hope Not Hate does training on dealing with people who have particular views on immigration, and they say, they'll ask them why people are concerned about immigration, and they'll find that somebody says, oh, these people are taking my jobs, they're also taking my benefits, and then they'll stop them and get them to think about that. And so if you stop people and ask quite open questions, and perhaps are able to feed something in about where it comes, why do you think that, I think that's a better way into dialogue, rather than shutting them down and making an accusation. And also, just to follow on from today's point on weaponisation, the way in which we deal with racism in our country is using the Macpherson approach to racism, which is that we will look at a case, we don't prejudge it, we'll investigate it carefully, and we'll treat people with due sensitivity. That's the British way. That is what we do. We don't call people out for bad faith when they've made that kind of allegation. We try and treat these things properly and sensitively, and I don't think we could ask for anything more than that. That's all that we're asking for, is to apply the same standard that we apply to all races.
Thank you. we have time for maybe 2 more questions. If they are...
He's Palestinian, I think he'd like to speak as a Palestinian observer.
I was going to say, if they are short questions, we'll have time for 2 questions if they are short questions. Go on then.
Thank you very much. Actually, I am the only Palestinian baby in this conference for today. So I want to say that the increase in the number of attacks on Jewish during the wars waged by the occupying state against Gaza, according to the statistics being shown.
Sorry, is this a question?
No, actually it's a comment.
I'm only thinking 2 questions.
I don't think you should censor Palestinian voices. Because in the end, they're the victims here. And I've been censored out of this whole debate on anti-Semitism.
Can I stop? No, I can stop if you want me to stop.
I would just want to be very clear that this isn't a debate on anti-Semitism. This is a session where we've invited external speakers to come and tell us about anti-Semitism, look out for it, ensure that we can look within our own party and look in our own communities and work to challenge and tackle anti-Semitism that has a very real effect in the lives of people that we work to represent or do represent.
We work with Palestinians too. Islamophobia is on the increase.
So this is an opportunity to
You're
ask.
actually being racist against Palestinians. Let the man speak. Let the man speak.
Sorry.
You're giving us a very, very bad impression of the Green Party and a bad impression of Jews. Actually, this panel is giving a pretty bad impression of Jews.
I just want to be very clear though that this was an opportunity to ask questions to the, if we had questions to the panel, so that we can get the best opportunity from a training session. I'm not silencing I'm not silencing people for an opinion. This wasn't.
I can make a question if you like.
Thank you, Debbie.
Yeah, can I make the question then?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you think, panelists, distancing yourself as a Jewish community in the country from the crimes of the state of occupation will make the hatred of Jewish less or not?
Okay. And one more question. I'm going to take a question from the front here.
My question would be actually to all 3 of you, also a representative of the Green Party. As a German, anti-Semitism has defined my life because I had to deal with what happened. So I'm partly surprised, but it's understandable that all of a sudden we as a Green Party we had the motion today, we start to talk about this, and how can we as a Green Party find a way to talk about this sensibly, because anti-Semitism is anti-Semitism and it's vile. And how can we talk about criticizing the state which is doing horrible things to another race? So we have to find a way how can we find a way to talk about that with the understanding you want for the Jewish position and an understanding we want for the Palestinian position as well. It's a question, but it's also a demand I have that as the Green Party we have to do that because we have to come to a solution.
Thank you very much.
Okay, very quickly, because I know we're running out of time. In answer to the first question, should the Jewish community distance itself from what Israel does and is accused of doing in order to reduce anti-Semitism? Well, as I tried to explain, anti-Semitism has been around a lot longer than Israel, and anti-Semitism exists irrespective of what Jews do or don't do. And I don't think it's right to place the responsibility on the victims of any form of bigotry or hatred to adapt their behaviour as the way to reduce that hatred. We're here in Britain, where it affects British Jews here in Britain. I think it's very important to, as it is on its own, and not constantly be coming back to, but what about what Israel does? There is, as I try to explain, it's perfectly possible to be extremely critical of Israel and extremely supportive of the Palestinians without being anti-Semitic. And it shouldn't be that difficult, because plenty of people manage it. And this comes on to the second question. I know you discussed definitions this morning. It's not for me to tell you what definition the Green Party should or shouldn't adopt. But I think a definition that is useful because it has practical guidelines about language might be the way forward.
I just add to Dave's point about how you can discuss kind of the Middle East conflict. Well, if you can discuss it without using conspiracy theories and Nazi comparisons and talk about it like you might do any other conflict in the world, that would seem to me okay, no? I don't think we're asking for anything particularly deep or complex. Is to remove the anti-Semitic references when dealing with a very entrenched and difficult conflict. That's it. Not asking for anyone, not special treatment, exactly the opposite. Everything the same as you might discuss any other foreign policies.
Thank you very much to our panel, and thank you very much, conference. If you could join me in a round of applause for your time today.
Thank you for watching. Well, for those coming late, please watch it again. It was interesting.